It was a cold and silent night when John walked alone through the forest near his home on the edge of the Mars colony zone. The air was still and the stars above looked like tiny fireflies frozen in time. He had just finished his long shift at the space station and was walking home to his small cabin built near the red cliffs. He liked the silence and peace of this place. There were no people here, no traffic, no noise, just him and the wild wind of Mars. Suddenly a bright light shot across the sky like a burning star falling from heaven. It came fast and silent and then crashed deep into the forest just a few miles ahead. The ground shook gently under his feet. John stopped. He had never seen anything like it. He pulled out his scanner, but it showed nothing unusual. No crash reports, no meteor activity, no alerts from the station. This thing was not supposed to be here. Heat followed the smoke rising in the distance. His boots made soft crunching sounds on the red soil as he got closer. He saw the trees bent and burned as if something had passed through them with great speed. In the center of the crash site was a strange pod. Not a rock, not a ship, something in between. It was silver and round, and half buried in the ground it glowed faintly and made a soft humming sound. John moved closer carefully. He could feel the heat coming from it, but not the kind of heat that burns. It was warm, like a heartbeat. There was a small window on the pod. Dirty and cracked, he wiped it gently with his hand, and what he saw inside made him step back in shock. There was a child, a small creature, not human but not scary either. Her skin was soft blue, her eyes were closed, and she looked like she was sleeping, but her face looked sad, like she had been crying for a long time. John looked around. No one was there, no sound, no signs of anyone coming. He touched the pod again. It opened slowly with a soft hiss. The air inside smelled sweet and strange. The child opened her eyes. They were big and purple and filled with fear. She looked at John, then she cried. Not a scream, not a growl, just a small, soft cry like a scared baby. John's heart melted. He had no idea where she came from. He had no idea what she was, but he could not leave her there. He picked her up gently. She was light as a feather. She held onto his jacket with her tiny fingers. He wrapped her in his coat and started walking back. His mind was racing. Should he report this? Should he hide her? What if someone was already looking for her? When he reached home, he placed her on the soft couch and gave her warm water. She looked at the cup with confusion, then tried to drink. John sat on the floor and watched her. She was calm now, just quiet and watching everything. She did not speak, not a word, but her eyes spoke 1,000 things. Fear, pain, hope. He felt like she had lost something, maybe someone. She looked too young to be alone and knew the rules. Any alien contact must be reported, but his heart said no. This child needed help. She needed care. She needed love. He could not let her be taken by cold hands and locked rooms. So he made a choice. He decided to keep her, to protect her, to raise her like a daughter. He gave her a name, Luna, because she had come from the stars and her eyes reminded him of the moon. From that moment on, he became her guardian, her protector, her father. He turned off all outside signals in his house, blocked scanners, set shields. No one would find her here. Not yet. Later that night, as the wind howled softly and Luna slept in peace for the first time, John sat near the window. He looked at the stars again, and he felt something strange, a sense that this was just the beginning, that this child would change everything. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, a soft knock, but in a place where no one ever visits, a knock is never just a knock. John stood up slowly. His heart beat faster. He looked at the door, then at Luna sleeping. He walked toward the door, hand shaking slightly. Who could it be? No one was supposed to be here. He took a breath and opened the door. Wind was soft that morning as sunlight touched the red hills of Mars, and Luna sat quietly by the window watching the sky with wide, curious eyes while John made breakfast in the small kitchen and tried to act like everything was normal. But nothing was normal anymore, because he was raising a child who was not from Earth and not from Mars and not from anywhere. He understood. Luna had been with him for 4 weeks now, and every day brought something new, something strange, something wonderful, and sometimes something scary. And yet she never cried again after that first night when he found her and brought her home and gave her a name and gave her hope and gave her something she had lost, maybe a family. She could not speak yet, not in words, but she could feel things and share them in small ways, like when she touched John's hand and he saw flashes in his mind, like pictures, like memories that were not his, like stars and tall shining towers and beings made of light. Or when she walked in the forest and animals came close as if drawn by a song only they could hear. John watched her grow faster than any human child, and he noticed her hair change color with her emotions, soft blue when calm, silver when excited, and a soft glow when she slept. And sometimes her feet would rise slightly above the ground while she dreamed, floating gently like a leaf in the wind. He had never believed in magic, but Luna made him question everything he thought he knew about science, about life, about the universe, and about love, because he loved her more each day and feared more each night that someone would come to take her away. He worked hard to hide her from the world, updating the shielding systems of his house, adding blockers for heat and motion sensors, creating false readings for government patrol drones, and keeping Luna indoors during high scan hours because Mars security was increasing its patrols in the outer zones, and any unknown life form could be seen as a threat, or worse, a subject for test. And Luna seemed to understand. She stayed quiet during scans. She hid under the desk when the patrol drones passed, and she never tried to open the door without John's permission, and sometimes she would stand close to the wall as if she could sense the machines in the sky, and her eyes would shine with a strange light that made John wonder what she was really capable of. One evening while John was repairing the power core under the floor, Luna sat beside him and placed her tiny hand on the control panel, and the screen lit up with codes he had never seen before, and the system rebooted faster than ever before, and she smiled for the first time, and John smiled back, though inside he was both amazed and afraid. He started keeping a journal, writing down everything she did, every new ability, every strange moment, because he knew one day someone would ask questions and he needed answers, or at least a record of the truth. But even as the days passed in peace, the nights brought strange dreams to Luna, and sometimes she would wake up shaking, her eyes full of tears, though she made no sound, and John would hold her close and whisper that she was safe and that no one could hurt her and that she was home. Now then, one night while she was sleeping, a new sound filled the room, a soft musical tone that came from nowhere and everywhere at once, and Luna sat up slowly and whispered her first clear word, and that word was, "She's coming." John froze. He checked the scanners, checked the shield grid, checked the outer cams, but found nothing, no signals, no alerts, no activity. And yet Luna stood by the window and looked up at the stars, and placed her hand on the glass, and her eyes were full of knowing. He asked her who was coming, but she did not answer. She only closed her eyes and placed her hand on his chest, and suddenly he saw a vision, not clear, not sharp, but full of emotion. A tall figure made of light, with gentle hands and a voice that sounded like wind through trees, and sorrow and longing in her eyes. John knew then that Luna had a mother, and she was searching and getting closer, and that maybe the pod crash was not an accident but a message or a call or a test. And he felt fear and hope all at once, because if she was coming, then things would change again, and the quiet life he had built would not last much longer. He walked to the old metal locker and opened it, revealing a hidden panel full of emergency plans, escape routes, encrypted files, and old tech he had not touched in years. And he knew he had to be ready, because Luna's mother might be a friend or something else, and the world was never kind to what it did not understand. Outside, the wind picked up and the red dust danced across the hills, while Luna pressed her forehead to the window and whispered a word in a language John did not know, and the stars above seemed to shimmer in reply, as if listening. The night was quiet, but the silence felt heavy, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath, and John sat alone in the control room below his house, while Luna slept upstairs with a soft blue light glowing around her body like a shield made of dreams and love. John had not slept in 2 days, his mind spinning with thoughts he could not escape and questions he could not answer, and now a new puzzle had arrived, something strange, something that made the hairs on his arms stand up. Every time he looked at it on the screen, the signal had appeared just before midnight, a soft pulse hidden deep in the background of regular space traffic, something so faint the scanners almost missed it, but John's upgraded system caught it, and flagged it as unknown, not hostile, not friendly, just unknown. He listened to it over and over again, and at first it sounded like static, then like wind, then like a soft voice calling out, not in words but in patterns, in rhythm, in something deeper than language, and somehow it felt alive. He ran it through translation software, through frequency analyzers, through every tool he had, and nothing worked. But Luna knew, she always knew, and when she came downstairs and heard the sound, her eyes widened, and her glow turned silver, and she whispered one word again and again, "Mother, mother, mother." John stared at her and knew this was it, the connection they had been waiting for, the proof that she was not alone, that someone out there was searching and calling and maybe finding her at last. He increased the signal strength, traced the direction of the pulse, and found a strange curve in the data, something that looked like a ship, not close but moving slowly through space between Mars and the dark belt, something big and quiet and completely off the grid. No ID code, no Federation tag, no known engine pattern, just a dark shape cutting through space like a ghost looking for something or someone. Luna stood beside him, silent and still, and placed her hand on the screen, and in that moment the signal changed, the rhythm shifted, and new sounds began to play, soft and slow, like music, like a lullaby, and Luna closed her eyes and began to hum the tune as if she had known it forever. John felt a chill crawl up his spine, because this was no ordinary message. It was personal, it was family, it was home. He recorded the entire sequence, locked it into a private file, and backed it up twice, then turned off the main system and sat back, breathing slow, trying to understand what would come next, because he knew now that the visitor was real and getting closer, and nothing could stop it. The next day, Luna was different, more quiet, more focused. She started drawing symbols on the walls, using glowing dust from her hands, patterns that looked like stars and maps and paths through galaxies, and every time she finished one, she would touch it gently and it would fade away, as if sinking into the wall itself. John watched her from a distance and took notes in his journal, even though half of it made no sense to him, but he knew it mattered, and one day someone would need to understand it all. That evening, Luna walked outside for the first time in weeks. The sky was dark and full of stars, and she lifted her arms to the sky and whispered in her language, and the stars seemed to shimmer brighter, as if replying to her soft voice. John followed her and stood beside her, feeling like a guest in his own world, and he asked her if she missed her home, and she looked at him with eyes full of stars and memories, and she nodded slowly, but then reached out and held his hand, and John knew she loved him too, and that love was something not limited by species or planets. Suddenly a sharp sound filled the air like a short burst of static, and Luna looked up quickly, her glow flashing white, and John ran back inside to check the system, and there it was again. The signal now stronger, more focused, and this time with a new pattern, something fast, something urgent, something that made John's heart race. He played it out loud, and Luna walked in and stared at the screen and then spoke one word, a word that was not English, not human, but filled the room with energy and light. And when she said it, the screen changed again, showing a symbol, a circle with 3 stars inside and a line running through it like a road. John recognized it from her earlier drawings. It was a location, a place in the far rings of the system, and Luna pointed at it, and then at herself, and then at the sky, and John understood she was telling him where her mother was coming from and where they might meet. He printed the data, packed supplies, prepared emergency tools, and for the first time in many years unlocked his old ship. Hidden beneath the garage, a small craft, fast and silent, built for stealth and speed. Luna stood by the ramp, her silver glow bright and strong, and John knew the time had come to find answers, to find her past, to face the truth. As the engines warmed and the ship lifted from the ground, Luna looked out the window and whispered again, "She's coming." The sky over the red hills was dark and still, and the stars above looked like frozen sparks waiting for something to begin. And deep inside the hidden valley, far from city scans and patrol drones, a strange light touched the ground without sound or warning, like a whisper from the stars landing where no one would see. John stood at the edge of the hill, his eyes wide as he watched the light grow and shape itself into something not fully real and not fully dream. A tall silver figure stepped out of the shimmer, her body flowing like water, her face covered in soft light, and her presence quiet yet powerful, like the center of a storm that had not yet touched the earth. Luna stood beside him, not afraid, not surprised, her eyes glowing softly as if this was what she had always known would happen, and her small hand reached out without shaking, her fingers trembling only with emotion, not fear, and her voice broke the silence with a single word, "Mother." John could not move. His feet felt frozen in the dust of Mars. His heart pounded like a drum, and his thoughts raced faster than he could control. He had prepared for this moment, feared it, dreamed of it, wondered what it would mean to meet the one who gave life to Luna, and now she was here, standing only a few feet away and saying nothing, yet saying everything. That alien mother stepped forward, her arms open, her glow warm and soft. Her eyes locked onto Luna's with a look that went beyond time and space, and Luna ran to her without hesitation and was wrapped in arms made of light and memory and love too deep for human language to hold. John looked away for a moment, not because he was jealous, but because the moment felt too big, too full of meaning for him to intrude. And when he looked back, Luna was speaking in soft tones, a language he could not understand, but somehow felt in his bones like music he had heard as a child, but forgotten. The mother looked at him, then her gaze deep and searching, not hostile, not cold, just full of questions and sorrow and quiet strength. And she stepped forward slowly and placed her hand on his chest, and John saw images in his mind, not clear, not sharp, but strong and full of emotion, planets, stars, voices, shadows, and the memory of a war that had taken too much from her. He saw Luna falling through space in the pod, her tiny body curled like a seed, sleeping, waiting, surviving, and the mother screaming in a silent room as she watched her child disappear into the black. And he understood that this meeting was not just a reunion but healing. The mother spoke through Luna's voice, soft and slow and full of weight, and she said, "Thank you." And John felt something break and something heal at the same time. She said she had searched through 1,000 systems, followed signals through storms and dust and silence, never giving up, and now she had found her again, and she wished to take her home. John nodded slowly, his heart full of pain and pride and fear, because he loved Luna more than anything, and the thought of losing her made his chest hurt. But he also knew she was never his to keep, only his to care for, and now maybe it was time to let go. But before he could speak, Luna turned to him, her eyes full of tears, and she said, "I want both. I want to stay with you and be with her too." And the mother touched Luna's cheek and smiled and looked at John again, and John saw hope in her smile and knew there was a chance. They sat together under the stars, mother, daughter, and the man who had become a father without asking, and they shared food and silence and small moments that felt like peace. And Luna laughed for the first time in days, and the sound echoed across the valley like a bell ringing in a forgotten church. That night, John could not sleep. He watched them from a distance, the way Luna leaned on her mother, the way the alien woman looked at the stars as if counting each one for a memory, and he wondered what life would look like now, and if there was a way forward that included them all. Before dawn, the mother showed him a small device, a glowing orb that floated between her palms and opened like a flower, showing images of her world, tall cities made of glass skies with 2 suns, oceans that changed color with the seasons. And John felt wonder and fear because it was beautiful and unknowns. She offered him a place in that world, a home if he wished to come with them, to start again, to be part of something larger than himself. And John looked at Luna, who was smiling and waiting, and he said only one word, "Yes." The morning light on Mars was soft and golden, and the sky above the hills looked calm, but something had changed in the air, and deep inside the valley where Luna had reunited with her real mother, John stood in silence, feeling the weight of a question That had no easy answer. He had dreamed of peace, but now the silence felt like the edge of a storm. And while Luna played with stones that floated above her palms, her mother watched the sky with eyes that seemed to see beyond time and space, and John watched them both, knowing that the moment of decision had come. She had offered him a place on her world, a life among her people, a new beginning where Luna would be safe and free, and together they could build something new. But to accept that offer meant leaving everything he had ever known and never returning to Earth or Mars or any part of the life he had once called normal. John walked along the ridge with slow steps, thinking about all the memories buried in the red dust, the cabin he had built with his own hands, the quiet nights alone before Luna arrived, the years of silence that suddenly meant nothing after she came into his life and turned it upside down with her soft eyes and her glowing skin and her silent love. He remembered the first time she smiled, the first time she floated above the ground, the way she reached for his hand whenever she felt scared, and the way she had said, "I want both," with a voice so soft and full of truth that it broke something inside him and filled it with light. He looked back toward the ship that waited just beyond the hills, its shape hidden by a cloaking field, but its presence heavy like a heartbeat in the ground, and he wondered what it would feel like to leave this planet behind, to step into a sky he could not understand and walk through cities made of light and music and strange colors. The mother approached him slowly, her footsteps making no sound and her presence calm like the wind before rain, and she placed a small device in his hand, and through it showed him a vision of a home built for all three of them, a quiet place with gardens and sky bridges and rivers that sang at night, and John felt a strange warmth grow in his chest. She spoke through the device with Luna's voice and said, "You do not have to decide now, but the window is closing and the ship cannot wait forever, and the longer we stay here, the more danger we bring to Luna and to you." John nodded without speaking and held the device close and walked back to the house where Luna sat on the steps watching a small insect crawl over her finger, glowing softly and humming a tune from her dreams, and she looked up at him and asked, "Are we going together?" And John sat beside her and said, "I hope so." But even as he spoke, a distant hum filled the air and a red light flashed on the horizon, and his heart sank as he recognized the sound of a Federation drone scanning the outer zone, and he knew the cloaking field was no longer enough and that someone somewhere had seen something and sent a signal. He rushed inside, activated the shield boosters, checked the jammer frequency, and told the mother to stay hidden with Luna while he sent a false report to the drone, pretending to be a survey worker alone and unarmed, and waited for it to pass. But deep down he knew this was just the beginning. The mother touched Luna's shoulder and whispered something that made her eyes glow brighter, and Luna ran to John and hugged him tightly and said, "They are coming and they do not understand, and we must leave soon or everything will break." John looked at the sky, watched the drone fade into the distance, and then looked at Luna and her mother and made the choice he had feared for days, because love was not about holding on, it was about walking forward even when the path was dark. He said, "We go tonight and I will come with you and I will protect Luna wherever we are, and I will trust the stars to guide us now." And the mother placed her hand on his and nodded slowly, and a soft tear rolled down her cheek like a star falling from a quiet sky. That night they packed everything they needed and said goodbye to the red hills and the silent wind and the memories buried in the dust. And as they walked toward the hidden ship, Luna turned one last time and whispered thank you to the place that gave her a second life. John looked at the sky one last time and felt no fear, only hope, and held her hand tight as the ship opened its doors. And the stars above seemed to move just a little closer. The night was darker than usual, and the stars above were hidden behind clouds of dust and silence, as if the sky itself was watching and waiting. And deep in the valley the hidden ship began to hum with slow energy, preparing for launch, while Luna stood near the ramp, her eyes wide and full of questions that had no answers. John moved quickly, loading the last of the supplies into the ship, checking the energy cells and the cloaking field, watching the scanner with one eye and the sky with the other, knowing that time was running out, and that every second brought them closer to discovery. The mother stood inside the ship, calm and still, her hands glowing with soft light as she touched the controls and tuned the ship to a silent frequency, a path hidden between satellites and patrol scans. And deep in her mind she counted each pulse, each signal, each threat, waiting in the dark between stars. Luna looked back at the hills one last time, her small fingers touching the cold metal of the ship, and she whispered goodbye to the ground that had held her, to the trees that had hidden her, and to the man who had become her home in a world not meant for her. John turned to speak, but before a single word could leave his mouth, the scanner lit up with a sharp red flash, and the alarm whispered one word, detected, and his heart stopped for a second as he saw the shape of 3 drones moving fast across the ridge, coming straight toward them like wolves chasing heat. There was no time for fear, no time for thought, only action. And John slammed the hatch closed, locked the outer ramp, and shouted to the mother to lift off now. And the ship began to rise slowly at first, then faster, cutting through the dust with a silent roar that only the earth could hear. The drones closed in their scanners, flashing their signals, bouncing off the hills and catching the shimmer of the ship's cloak just for a moment, enough to lock on, enough to report. And in the command tower far away, a red dot appeared on a black screen, and a voice said, "Unidentified launch in restricted zone," and the chase began. John strapped Luna into her seat, held her hand tight, and stared at the screen as the ship moved through the clouds and into open air, and the drones followed fast sending warning signals and preparing to disable the ship if it did not respond. And John knew they would not wait long. The mother opened a secret path between satellites, a narrow gap between communication lines and defense nets, and steered the ship through it. With eyes closed and hands steady as if following a song only she could hear, and John watched her in awe and fear and hope all mixed into one. Luna closed her eyes and whispered something soft and strange, and the lights around her flickered and the ship's energy field grew stronger as if her voice had touched something deep inside the engine, something alive and ancient and full of stars. The drones fired a warning shot, a sharp beam that passed close to the ship's left wing, and John felt the heat through the metal and shouted for speed, and the mother answered by shifting the ship into pulse mode, a short burst of light and motion that pushed them forward faster than sight. But the drones were built for war and did not give up, and they followed close through the gap, chasing them through dust and stars. And John knew they could not run forever, not like this, not with Luna on board, and the memory of home still so close behind. He reached into the emergency panel, pulled out an old cloaking beacon, a device he had never used, a trick for fools, but maybe now their only chance, and he threw it out of the ship into the air, and it exploded in light, showing a false trail, a fake escape route, leading the drones in a different direction. Two of the drones followed the beacon, their systems fooled for now, and John let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. But the third drone that stayed on them, faster, sharper, more focused, as if it knew something more, and John looked at Luna and asked her, "Can you help?" She nodded slowly, reached out her hand and touched the wall of the ship, and a wave of blue light spread across the metal, and the drone behind them stopped for a second as if confused, and then turned away. Its signal broken, its target lost. The ship rose higher past the last scan point and entered the dark sky above Mars, and the stars opened like a door, and Luna smiled and leaned against John and whispered, "Safe." The mother set the ship on auto and walked to them, knelt beside them and said, "You were brave and strong, and now we are free." And John looked at Luna and then at her and said, "Not yet," because freedom was not just escape, it was what came next, and far ahead lay new stars, new dangers, new choices, and maybe new hope, and they would face it together. The stars were no longer cold and distant, they were close now, glowing like soft lanterns guiding the ship through the endless sky. As Luna sat by the window, her eyes wide and shining with wonder, while the silence of space wrapped around them like a warm blanket after a long storm, John leaned back in his seat, watching the screens flicker as strange constellations passed by, and unknown signals danced across the panel, and yet everything felt calm, everything felt quiet for the first time in weeks, as if the universe itself had decided to take a breath and let them be. Mother stood at the helm, her hands moving slowly across symbols that changed shape and color, with every motion guiding the ship, not with maps but with memory, with instinct, with something deeper than calculation. And John could see in her face a peace that had not been there before. They had crossed the last border of human reach, past the final scanner of the outer belt, and now traveled through space untouched by Earth or Mars or any law that could separate them again. And Luna looked up at John and asked, "Are we there yet?" And he smiled and said, "Almost." The ship began to slow as they approached a glowing blue curve in space, a ripple like water bending light and time, and the mother touched a crystal at the center of the console, and the ship passed through without shaking, without sound, like slipping into a dream without waking. On the other side, a world appeared, not dark, not dry, not cold, but bright and alive, a planet of green and silver, with oceans that moved like silk and mountains that floated in the sky, held by light that pulsed with music. And below the clouds, great towers rose like trees reaching toward the stars. John stared in silence, his heart full of questions and feelings he could not name, and Luna pressed her face against the window, laughing softly as animals with wings of fire flew beside the ship, welcoming her home with shapes and colors he had never seen before. The ship descended slowly into a valley filled with glowing flowers and soft winds, and as the hatch opened, John felt the air touch his skin, warm and clean, with a scent like rain mixed with song, and for the first time he felt he could breathe without fear, without weight. The people of the valley came to greet them, tall and graceful, with eyes like moons and voices like water. They bowed to the mother and smiled at Luna, and then turned to John, not with suspicion but with kindness, and offered him their hands in their welcome. Luna ran ahead, touching the grass that glowed beneath her feet, laughing with joy as she was lifted by two young ones into the air, floating gently toward a tree that opened like a house and closed again like a promise. And John watched her with tears he did not hide. The mother walked beside him through the garden, showing him places where thought shaped matter and light answered feeling, and time moved slower like a song in slow motion, and she said, "Here you are safe. Here you are free. Here you can choose your own future." They gave John a home near the lake, with walls that responded to mood and windows that opened to stars, and inside it was quiet and simple and warm, and in the center a single light pulsed with his heartbeat, as if the house itself was alive and listening. At night, Luna came to him with her hands full of starfruit and stories she could not yet tell but tried to share through touch and light and dream. And when she slept beside him under the soft sky, he felt complete, not because everything made sense but because it no longer had. 2 weeks passed, and John learned their ways, their tools, their language, not with books or screens but with moments and silence and trust. And every day he saw Luna grow, not just in size but in spirit, her glow brighter, her voice stronger, her joy deeper. One evening as they sat near the water watching the twin moons rise. Luna asked him if he missed Earth, and he said sometimes, but then she took his hand and placed it on her chest and said, "This is home now," and John believed her thought. Mother came to him one morning with a gift, a small crystal that held memories of Luna's early life, of the journey that brought her to him, of the day she called him father for the first time, not with words but with love. And she said, "You saved her, and she saved you. And now you both save each other." John stood on the balcony that night, looking up at the stars, and wondered how far they had come, how much had changed, how close he had come to losing everything, only to find something greater, something real, something that would last beyond stars and silence. And as Luna slept peacefully in her new bed with stardust in her hair and light in her smile, John whispered a quiet promise to never leave her side and to protect this new world with the same courage that brought him here, because sometimes home is not where you were born, but where you are found, where you are loved, where you are free, and in that place beyond fear and fire a new story had begun. The end.